Alright, so I'm just in the middle of sharpening these knives, and this is probably the sharpest I've ever got these knives. This is the best, little, cheapest knife I've ever had in my life. This is the Buck 874. Bought this at Canadian Tire for $8, and I just keep on buying these knives. As you can see, I have another one right here. And I just finished using the Spyderco on these guys. I have a previous video on how to sharpen a knife with this sharpener, but this sucker is razor sharp. Like, I can't believe for how much I spent on this knife. I'll just take a piece of paper here. Obviously this isn't the most definitive way to test a knife, but it doesn't matter how thick or thin the paper is. Like, it just slices through this sucker, no problem. Same thing with this guy. Let's see how this guy does. And it's just right through this guy. Yeah, it's just for an $8 knife. You know, a lot of people, they will say that when you get a cheap knife, it sharpens up real good, right? But then it doesn't really have much staying power, right? It doesn't have much staying power all the way through the project, right? So you might have a deer that you have to butcher. But every single deer I've used with these knives, I've never had to sharpen them midway. Skinned a moose with this knife. The whole thing. Never have I had to sharpen or put this guy on a steel halfway through a job. So I take him through the coarse grain, right, to reprofile the edge, right, because the edge on this isn't what the edge is on this. Okay, this is a 30-degree angle, all right, and then after I use these coarse grit to reprofile the edge, I use the fine edge. Okay, then after I use the fine edge, I'm just going to take you to my strop here. All this is a belt. Nothing fancy, that's for sure. So I drag the knife along the strop, flat as can be, right? And without lifting the knife, I fold the burr on top of itself, right? Because the whole purpose of using a strop is to remove the burr. And the knife is flat all the way through. I don't want to dull the blade or the edge. I just want to fold the burr so the burr removes itself, okay? And all the way down here. Now you can see I'm gathering a little bit of steel here, eh? And most people use a compound, like a rubbing compound on their strops, which is fantastic, right? Because they want to be able to create a little bit of friction on the knife, okay? If I take a piece of sandpaper, all right, rough that up, remove all of the steel that's embedded within the strop. There's a little bit more up here, no worries. And now it's back to the roughness that I desire. Take my knife on it, fold it, and all the way down. And that's how I get my cheap ass knives as sharp as can be. And by no means is this as good as Owen tool steel or those fancy $300 knives, okay? But it gets the job done, and it can do a whole deer without having to mess around. right. All right, I just wanted to show you what I mean by the burr here. Now, I hope this comes out. So you see right at the tip here, okay? So if I take my finger and I round that over, it disappears, okay? Now if I flip the knife over, there's the burr again. You can see the jagged edges all the way. So if I run my thumb around that burr, it'll disappear. Now, is this the end of the world? No, it isn't. But if you want to have your knife as sharp as possible, now basically this is just buffing the knife at the last stage, okay? And just constantly taking that burr and breaking it, right? Then breaking it. And that's the whole point of the strop, right? So it's taking it and not angling it, right? It's just flattening it, then turning the burr on top of itself, ever so gently, not pressing hard, and breaking it off. Sliding it, breaking it off, sliding it, and breaking it off, and going like this. Now if I had some rubbing compound, like Smurf poo, or anything like that, all the better. All right, I just don't have any. That's why I just rough up this strop as best I can and go like that, right? So the buffing compound would just be like another layer of fine grit sandpaper. But you see how I'm not angling it, right? So you'd essentially be sanding all this part as well then, right? Which isn't a bad thing. Because you notice, right, hopefully I can get the angle here, right? So when I'm applying pressure, see how I'm bending it? I'm bending the strop, right? So you don't need to add an angle because the angle is already created, right? So you just go in like this all the way along here. This isn't to sharpen the knife. This is just one extra buffing layer, right? Because you've already profiled your edge. It's as sharp as can be. Now you're just breaking down that burr, right? So both sides. Now that is this going to come into focus? Both sides of the knife are equal, right? Because if you just sharpen all of a sudden, you take a steel, you sharpen this side, and you had a burr. Now this side, if it was cutting paper, would be extra sharp, right? But then again, this side wouldn't be as sharp as the other side because you had a burr, right? It's more of an angle. But now you're removing that burr, so both sides are equally as sharp. That's just my quick and dirty explanation of what I've learned. So you don't necessarily have to buy the most expensive knife. Get yourself in the hawk, right? And all this is a folding knife. I've done bears, coyotes, deer, moose with this dude right here. So if you're in the need of a good hunting knife, right over here, the Buck 874. All right, thanks for watching.